You played love. I played truth.
I need to tell you something about myself before this story makes sense. For 15 years, I worked for a government agency that technically doesn't exist on any organizational chart. Deep cover operations, classified missions across 3 continents. The kind of work where your real name disappears into layers of false identities, and you learn to become whoever the mission requires. I tracked terrorists, dismantled criminal networks, did things I can never talk about. When I finally retired 3 years ago, I was exhausted. I'd seen enough darkness, enough violence, enough betrayal to last several lifetimes. I genuinely wanted something different, something normal. That's how I became Daniel Carter, a mild-mannered IT consultant who worked from home. I met Jennifer at a charity fundraiser where she was coordinating everything with impressive efficiency. She was 32, successful in her event planning career, confident, organized. Everything I thought I needed after years of chaos. She seemed perfect, someone stable, someone safe. After years of living in the shadows, she represented the quiet suburban life I thought I wanted. We dated for 8 months. I was attentive, generous, patient. She liked that I was calm, that I never caused drama, that I seemed content with a simple life. We got married in a small ceremony, bought a house in a quiet neighborhood with good schools, even though we had no kids, and I thought I'd finally found my exit from that old life. But here's the thing about playing a role. When you're really good at it, people believe it completely. And I was very, very good at it. Jennifer saw exactly what I showed her. A quiet, accommodating guy who never raised his voice, who said, "Whatever you think is best," who smiled politely at neighborhood barbecues and let her make all the decisions. Average height, lean build, the kind of face that disappears in a crowd. I kept my hair short and neat, wore button-down shirts and khakis, said, "Yes, dear," more times than I can count. I was the picture of a domesticated husband, perfectly and deliberately unremarkable. Jennifer loved that at first. She'd been through a series of failed relationships with exciting men who'd left her broke and heartbroken. She thought she'd found someone safe, someone she could mold, someone whose life she could organize and control. What she didn't realize was that underneath the mild-mannered exterior, I was still the same person who'd spent 15 years in some of the world's most dangerous situations. I'd just gotten very, very good at hiding it. The marriage started well enough. I genuinely wanted normalcy. I ignored the small cruelties, the way she rolled her eyes when I spoke, how she'd forget to tell me about social events until the last minute, the passive-aggressive comments about my career being less important than hers, the way she'd criticize everything from my cooking to my clothes. I told myself this was what normal marriages were like, that maybe I just didn't understand civilian relationships after so many years undercover. My best friend, Nathan Cooper, had warned me early on. We'd served together overseas, survived situations that would break most people, saved each other's lives more times than either of us could count. Nathan had left the agency 5 years before me and now ran a successful private security firm in Seattle. He'd transitioned well, found his footing in civilian life, even married a trauma surgeon named Lisa, who understood the baggage we carried. During one of our monthly video calls about 6 months into my marriage, Nathan had looked at me through the screen and said, "She doesn't respect you, brother. I can see it in how she talks about you, how she dismisses everything you say. You're not building a partnership. You're being a doormat." "Maybe that's what I need," I'd replied, defensive. "Someone who sees me as normal and safe, not as whatever I used to be. There's a difference between being safe and being a doormat, Daniel. You're playing this role so well you've forgotten who you actually are. You're better than this." I'd brushed him off. I wasn't ready to admit he was right. I wanted so badly to believe I could be normal, that I could leave that other life behind completely. The turning point came 3 months ago. Jennifer started staying late at networking events 2 or 3 times a week. Her phone suddenly had a password, something she'd never done in our entire relationship. She started going to the gym 5 days a week instead of her usual twice-weekly routine, buying expensive new clothes that seemed designed to impress someone, getting her nails done every week, coming home smelling of perfume she didn't wear when she left. Classic signs that my old training had taught me to recognize immediately: infidelity, probably with an agenda beyond just the affair itself. I could have confronted her right then. I could have hacked her phone in 30 seconds. That skill set doesn't just disappear when you retire. It's like muscle memory. I could have followed her, confirmed what I already knew within hours. Instead, I waited. I watched. I documented everything. Because if there's one thing my old life taught me, it was patience. Rush in angry and emotional, and you lose control of the situation. Take your time, gather intelligence, understand the full scope of what you're dealing with, wait for exactly the right moment, and you win. 2 weeks ago, I overheard a phone call that confirmed everything and revealed just how deep this went. Jennifer was in the garage thinking I was upstairs in the shower, but I'd come back down to grab my phone charger and heard her voice through the door, completely different than I'd ever heard it. Younger, excited, alive in a way it never was with me, like she was a different person entirely. I can't wait either, baby. Just a little longer. He's so pathetic he won't even see it coming. My lawyer says I'll get the house, and with his income, child support will set us up perfectly. We didn't have any children. She was planning a future she intended to create through divorce, already counting money that didn't exist yet. Brandon, I love you so much. Soon we won't have to hide anymore. Brandon. I ran a background check that night using resources and databases I'd sworn I'd never access again. Brandon Pierce, 42 years old, small-time real estate developer who'd never been married despite his age. He had a reputation in certain circles as someone who liked to seduce married women for sport, manipulate them into bad financial decisions, then disappear when things got complicated or the money ran out. 3 paternity suits settled quietly over the years, a string of business partners who claimed he'd defrauded them, known for being charming, manipulative, and utterly without conscience. The kind of hunter who left destruction in his wake and never faced real consequences because he was careful about covering his tracks. Perfect match for Jennifer, apparently. Or rather, she was a perfect target for him. I could have just left right then, filed for divorce, moved on, let them have each other and deal with the inevitable fallout when Brandon moved on to his next sufferer. But something cold and familiar woke up inside me. The part of me that had tracked down terrorists across international borders. The part that had dismantled criminal networks with surgical precision. The part that had made dangerous people afraid when they learned who was hunting them. I realized I wasn't just Daniel Carter, the mild-mannered IT consultant anymore. That was just a mask I'd been wearing, a role I'd been playing. Underneath, I was still someone much more dangerous than either Jennifer or Brandon could possibly imagine. I decided to let this play out. Let them think they were winning. Let them believe I was the pathetic, oblivious husband Jennifer described. And when the time was exactly right, I'd show them what happens when you underestimate the quiet man in the corner. Last Thursday started like any other evening. I made dinner, salmon with roasted vegetables, following a recipe I'd found online exactly. Jennifer picked at it, checking her phone every 30 seconds, her leg bouncing with barely contained energy, like she could barely stand to be in the same room with me. "This is too dry," she said, pushing the plate away after 2 bites. "I followed the recipe exactly," I replied calmly, my voice neutral. "Well, maybe you're just not good at cooking. You're not good at a lot of things." She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I'm going out. Don't wait up." "It's Thursday night. Where are you going?" Her eyes flashed with something ugly, contempt mixed with barely restrained anger. "Since when do I need your permission? God, you're so clingy. I can't even breathe in this house without you questioning me." She left in a cloud of expensive perfume I'd never seen her wear before, probably bought specifically for Brandon. I sat at the table alone, the untouched dinner cooling between empty chairs. Then I pulled out my laptop and continued my research, adding more pieces to the puzzle I'd been assembling. Brandon Pierce had enemies, lots of them. Business partners he'd cheated out of hundreds of thousands of dollars. Women he'd discarded after draining their bank accounts. A half-brother named Victor Chen who'd changed his last name after Brandon destroyed their family business and then testified against him in court, sending Victor to prison for fraud Brandon had actually committed. These were people who would be very interested in what I was about to do, people who had their own scores to settle. Jennifer came home at 2 a.m. that night, reeking of wine and cologne that definitely wasn't mine. She stumbled past me without a word, didn't even try to hide where she'd been or what she'd been doing. I just added another data point to my mental ledger, another piece of evidence to the file I was building. But last night was when everything changed, when Jennifer made the mistake that would end her comfortable life. Jennifer came home early, around 6 o'clock in the evening, her face flushed with anticipation and excitement. She showered for over an hour, using expensive bath products. She changed into the red dress I'd bought her for our anniversary, An anniversary dinner she'd complained through the entire evening, making snide comments about the restaurant being trying too hard, and the food being pretentious. She spent another hour on her makeup and hair, styling everything perfectly, getting ready like she was going to a gala or a wedding, putting in effort I hadn't seen her make in months. Then she walked into the living room where I was reading a book on the couch and said the words that sealed her fate, the words that would destroy the life she thought she was so cleverly building. "You're sleeping in the garage tonight." I looked up from my book slowly. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, wearing that red dress like armor, her makeup perfect, her hair cascading over her shoulders in waves that had taken an hour to create. "Excuse me? You heard me. My real boyfriend is coming over, so take your pillow and whatever else you need and sleep in the garage. He'll be here in an hour and I want you gone." She said it with such casual cruelty, such absolute confidence, that for a moment I almost admired the sheer audacity of it. She wasn't just having an affair. She was deliberately humiliating me, testing to see just how spineless and pathetic she believed I was, probably planning to use my reaction as ammunition in the divorce proceedings she'd already started planning. "Jennifer," I started, keeping my voice calm. "Don't Jennifer me. This marriage has been dead for a year. We both know it. The only difference is I found someone who actually excites me, who actually has ambition and passion and plans for the future. Someone who isn't content being a nobody working from a home office, going nowhere in life." Her lip curled with pure contempt. "You're like a piece of furniture, Daniel. I don't even notice you anymore. You're just there, taking up space." She wasn't joking. Her eyes were bright with something between contempt and exhilaration. She wanted this confrontation, wanted me to beg or plead or show some kind of weakness she could later weaponize in divorce court, prove how emotionally abusive I'd been, or how she'd been afraid of my reaction. I stood up slowly, carefully setting my book aside. "You're really doing this?" "Yes, and if you make a scene, if you cause any problems tonight, my lawyer will hear all about how aggressive and controlling you are, how afraid I've been living with you, how you've been monitoring my every move." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper, her breath smelling of the wine she'd already been drinking. "You really thought you could keep me? You're boring, Daniel. You've always been boring. Brandon actually makes me feel alive, makes me feel like a woman again instead of a babysitter for a grown man who can't even cook dinner properly." There were 1,000 things I could have said in that moment. I could have told her about the offshore account she thought was so secret, the one Brandon had been helping her set up in the Cayman Islands, which I'd flagged to the IRS 3 weeks ago through a carefully worded anonymous tip. I could have mentioned that I knew about Brandon's 3 other girlfriends, all married women, all being fed the exact same lines about starting a new life together, all being slowly drained of their assets. I could have explained exactly who and what I used to be, just to see the color drain from her face and watch the contempt turn to fear. Instead, I picked up my keys from the coffee table along with my phone charger. "I heard you. The garage." "Wait, what are you doing?" Her confidence wavered slightly. "You told me to sleep in the garage. I'm choosing to sleep somewhere else entirely. You can't just leave. We need to talk about this, about boundaries and expectations going forward." I turned to face her one last time, my hand on the doorknob. My expression was neutral, almost pleasant. The same expression I'd worn during interrogations in places I can't name. Only someone trained to read micro-expressions would have seen the coldness in my eyes, the slight tension in my jaw. "Enjoy your evening, Jennifer. I hope it's everything you've been planning for." I left without slamming the door, without giving her the dramatic reaction she wanted. I drove my 10-year-old Honda Civic, the car Jennifer constantly complained about, calling it embarrassing and saying it made us look poor, through our quiet, suburban neighborhood, past the park where we used to walk when we were first dating, past the coffee shop where we'd had our first date, and I'd thought maybe I'd found something real. I checked into a Hampton Inn 20 minutes away, paid cash so there'd be no credit card trail, and went up to my 3rd-floor room overlooking the parking lot. Bland corporate art on the walls, a bed with scratchy sheets, a TV bolted to the dresser. It was perfect, anonymous, and unmemorable. Then I pulled out my laptop and activated the surveillance feeds I'd installed in our house 3 months ago. Hidden cameras, military-grade equipment that was invisible to anyone who didn't know exactly where to look, the kind of technology that technically wasn't available to civilians, but that I still had access to through old channels. At 8:47 p.m., Brandon Pierce pulled into my driveway, in a silver Porsche 911 Carrera. Expensive, or at least it looked expensive to people who didn't know better. According to the financial records I'd pulled using methods I'd learned overseas, Brandon was mortgaged up to his eyeballs, leveraged on 13 different properties, with outstanding debts of approximately $4 million and one bad quarter away from complete bankruptcy. The Porsche was leased, not owned. Jennifer met him at the door. They kissed like teenagers, all hands and desperate groping. Brandon picked her up, carried her inside like some romantic movie, kicked the door shut with his foot. I watched them disappear into the house. I didn't watch what happened in the bedroom. I'm not a masochist, and I didn't need visual confirmation of what I already knew. Instead, I opened a different file on my laptop, the comprehensive dossier I'd been building on Brandon Pierce over the past 3 weeks. His pattern was consistent and methodical. He'd seduce married women, usually ones with money or valuable assets, string them along with promises of a future together, convince them to make financial decisions that benefited him, bad investments, secret accounts, transferring assets, then disappear once the well ran dry or the divorce got complicated enough that staying wasn't worth the risk. Jennifer was his 4th target in the past 3 years. The other 3 had all ended the same way. The women divorced, financially ruined, and emotionally destroyed, while Brandon moved on to his next sufferer without facing any consequences. But there was more to it than just Brandon working alone. He had a partner, someone providing the technical infrastructure for his schemes. Shell companies in Delaware and Nevada, offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands and Panama, money laundering through complex real estate deals. This wasn't amateur hour fraud. This was sophisticated, organized, professional-level financial crime that required expertise Brandon didn't have. At 11:30 p.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer. "Where are you?" I didn't respond. At midnight. "Daniel, answer me. This is childish, and we need to discuss what happened like adults." At 1 a.m. "You can't just disappear. We have things we need to resolve. I'm willing to talk about this calmly." At 2 a.m. "I'm calling the police if you don't respond. I'm worried something happened to you." At 2:45 a.m., my phone started ringing. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again and again. By 3 a.m., I had 47 missed calls and a flood of increasingly panicked texts, her tone shifting from annoyed to genuinely frightened. The last one made me smile for the first time in hours. "Please come back. He saw something on your computer, Googled your name, and left in a panic. Started yelling about you being dangerous. Who are you really?" Earlier that night, before Jennifer told me to sleep in the garage, I'd already put a plan in motion. I'd called in an old favor from years ago, a man who still owed me for saving his life during a job in Istanbul. I asked him to make sure that anyone searching Daniel Carter online would find exactly what I wanted them to see. Nothing too sensitive, nothing that would bring official heat from my old agency, but enough to make anyone think twice about crossing me. There were a few military records under my old cover identity, showing me as a Marine Force recon operator. Some redacted reports from classified missions, with just enough left visible to sound terrifying. Phrases like high-value target neutralized and operations in hostile territory. A single photo from Middle East showed me in full combat gear, half of my face hidden, standing over a subdued hostile with a rifle in hand. And a short newspaper piece from 8 years back mentioned a government operative known only as Carter, who stopped a terrorist attack by taking out an entire cell before they could strike. The article had been wiped from official databases long ago, but I'd made sure it could still be found with the right search, and that's exactly what Brandon Pierce did. Before he climbed into bed with another man's wife, he'd looked up the husband. He found that little trail I'd planted, and it scared him out of his mind. He probably thought I was coming back to eliminate them both. I picked up my phone and sent Jennifer one short text. "I'm at the Hampton Inn on Route 9, room 214. Don't call me tonight. We'll talk tomorrow." Then I shut off the phone. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. I woke at 5 a.m., my body still wired to old habits. I ran 5 miles on the hotel treadmill, showered, and sat in the lobby by 7 with a cup of cheap coffee and a burner phone I'd activated under a fake name. When I finally turned my main phone back on, it lit up with 127 messages. I skimmed a few. Jennifer's panic was unfolding in predictable waves: denial, anger, pleading, fear. Her last text came at 4:32 a.m. "Daniel, I made a terrible mistake. Brandon isn't who I thought he was. He lost it when he found stuff about you online. He said you're dangerous. He said I was in danger too. He left. Please come home. I'm scared. I don't understand who you really are. I deleted it without replying. At 7:15 sharp, the burner phone rang. Nathan Cooper's calm, steady voice came through. Morning, brother. Got your message. I'm in. You sure? This could get messy. You saved my life in Kabul when that building collapsed, he said. You think I'm letting you do this alone? I've been waiting 3 years for you to stop pretending you're someone smaller than you are. What do you need? Intel, surveillance support, digital analysis. Later, witnesses willing to testify. Done. I'll be there tomorrow morning. Lisa can handle the firm. For the next 20 minutes, I laid out the plan. He'd handle the tech side and reach out to some old contacts who still owed us favors. This wasn't an official op, it was personal, but the process was the same as any mission we'd run overseas. After we hung up, I dug deeper into Brandon's world. The money trails told the story fast. Jennifer's lawyer turned out to be Brandon's ex-girlfriend, Rita Walsh, disbarred 3 years earlier for ethics violations. She still took cash cases, helping women fake claims of misuse to gain leverage in divorces. Her pattern was simple. Create fake fear, plant evidence of control, win sympathy in court. That offshore account Jennifer thought she controlled? Brandon had opened it himself, copying tactics he'd used on 2 previous sufferers. He'd already drained most of the money, leaving just enough to avoid suspicion. And those networking events Jennifer loved so much? They were part of Brandon's recruiting setup, a group he called New Horizons, marketed as a space for professional women to grow. In truth, it was a hunting ground. He studied the women there, learned their weaknesses, and picked his next marks. At 9 a.m., a sharp knock hit my hotel door. I checked the peephole. Jennifer stood there, still wearing last night's red dress. Her mascara had run, her hair was tangled, and she looked like she hadn't slept a minute. I opened the door, but didn't step aside. Daniel, she said, her voice trembling. Thank God. I've been driving around for an hour trying to find you. What do you want, Jennifer? She winced at my tone. I'd never spoken to her that way before. Flat, cold, detached. The voice I used for interrogations, not conversations. Can I come in? We need to talk about last night. We can talk here. Please, she whispered. I know I hurt you, but Brandon lied to me. He said you were dangerous, that you were hiding things, that I had to protect myself. Last night was supposed to be a test, to see if what he said about you was true. But then he saw something on your computer, files or photos, and he just lost it. He started yelling that you were some kind of government assassin. Then he bolted, just got in his car and vanished. I don't know what to think anymore. I'm scared, and I don't know who you really are. I leaned against the doorway, watching her closely. This was her new move, acting like the sufferer, pretending Brandon had tricked her instead of admitting they'd been partners in the scam for months. So your boyfriend lost his nerve fast, I said. He wasn't really my boyfriend. It was a mistake, a stupid, weak moment. I felt ignored and... Jennifer, I cut in. I have 17 hours of footage from our house. I've got your texts, emails, and calls from the last 3 months. I know about the offshore account, Rita Walsh and New Horizons. I know it all. Her face went pale. You've been spying on me? Collecting evidence of fraud, I said. That's what the law calls it. I handed her a thick envelope. Divorce papers, filed this morning. I'm citing infidelity. It matters for assets in this state. I'm also suing you and Brandon for fraud, conspiracy, and emotional distress. You can't do this! You're insane! I already did. And my lawyer, a real one, not your boyfriend's disbarred buddy, is very confident. The evidence speaks for itself. Her hands shook as she tore open the envelope. Her eyes darted across the pages. You're asking for the house, the cars, everything. Everything I paid for. You covered about 12% of our income over the past 3 years and spent nearly 70% of it. The numbers don't lie, and your new lawyer will tell you the same. You're being cruel, Daniel. Spiteful. After all we've been through, 3 years of marriage. After everything, you brought another man into our home and told me to sleep in the garage. Don't talk to me about cruelty. You don't even know what that means. Tears smeared her makeup, black streaks running down her face. I felt nothing. I'd learned long ago how to tell real emotion from performance. This was performance. There's something else you should hear, I said evenly. Brandon Pierce is already under investigation by the SEC for securities fraud. The IRS is combing through his last 7 years of taxes. 3 ex-partners are suing him for fraud. Once his records are subpoenaed, that secret offshore account will be front and center. Every cent will come to light. Her voice cracked. You did this. You ruined him. I just pointed the right people in the right direction. Brandon ruined himself a long time ago. I just made sure someone finally held him accountable. I started closing the door. My lawyer will reach out to yours. Your actual lawyer, not Rita. Have your things out by Friday. I'm moving back in tomorrow, and I don't want you here. It's my house too. I have rights. Check the deed, my name only. Same for the mortgage. You're not listed anywhere, remember? You said your credit was too bad when we bought it. Maybe you should have paid attention to the fine print. I shut the door on her protests and locked it. Through the peephole, I watched her stand there, angry, confused, scared. After a few minutes, she turned and walked away, her heels echoing down the hall. I went back to my desk, opened my laptop, and reviewed my notes. Phase 1 was done. Jennifer and Brandon were split, both panicking, both desperate. But I was just getting started. Within days, things moved fast. Nathan showed up with 2 cases full of surveillance and analysis gear. We traced Brandon's partner, the man running the technical side of the con. His name was Kevin Chen, 41, pretending to be one of Brandon's sufferers. He'd spent 8 years at the NSA and Signals Intelligence before quitting and teaming up with Brandon 5 years ago. Together, they'd built a complex fraud network nearly impossible to trace. They'd registered shell companies in Delaware and Nevada, moved money through endless transfers, and built fake real estate deals to launder the cash. Everything looked clean on paper. When Brandon tried to threaten me with classified files about my past, I knew Kevin had used his old government access to dig them up. What they didn't realize was that those files were decoys, sanitized records I'd left there on purpose. I baited them with what looked like panic, sloppy security mistakes that someone with intelligence experience would spot. Brandon and Kevin took the bait, documenting everything. They thought they were building a case to blackmail me or force me out of the divorce. What they didn't know was that all their evidence pointed straight back to them, fabrications they'd created themselves. I arranged a meeting with Kevin in a warehouse Nathan had secured and wired with cameras. Kevin showed up trying to look confident, but he was sweating bullets. I laid out every piece of evidence, his connection to Brandon, the shell companies, the accounts, the women they'd scammed over 5 years. He fell apart in minutes. When I gave him a choice, cooperate and testify for a reduced sentence or face the full weight of federal charges, he broke. With shaking hands, he pulled out a thumb drive. Everything's here. Accounts, sufferers, messages, all of it, he said quietly. I want immunity and witness protection. We'll talk to the prosecutors about immunity, I said. Protection I can arrange. But Kevin, you'll spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder. Those women you hurt, they won't forget, and neither will I. 2 days later, the FBI arrested Brandon at his lawyer's office. The charges were heavy: wire fraud, racketeering, conspiracy, money laundering, threats, and more. With Kevin's cooperation and the testimony of 17 sufferers, the case was airtight. Brandon's expensive lawyer took one look at the evidence and pushed for a plea deal. Brandon refused, screaming about secret operations and government setups. The judge denied him bail. He spent the next few weeks in county jail, watching everything he'd built collapse around him. The trial ran for 3 weeks, first grabbing local attention, then spreading to regional news as reporters uncovered the full scale of the fraud. Kevin spent 3 days on the stand, calmly tearing apart Brandon's defense. He told how they met, how Brandon lured him in with promises of easy cash, and how over the years they'd refined their scam. Brandon was the front man, Kevin said flatly. I built the system, he found the sufferers, earned their trust, made them emotionally dependent. I created the fake companies, offshore accounts, and records that made it all look real. We split the money 60-40, his favor. Then came the sufferers, each one describing how Brandon had destroyed their savings and their lives. Women who'd lost homes, confidence, and hope. Even Brandon's half-brother, Victor, testified that Brandon had ruined their family business and left him serving 18 months in prison for crimes Brandon actually committed. During closing arguments, Brandon snapped. He screamed that I was CIA, that the whole thing was a government setup. The judge had officers drag him out while his lawyer covered his face in shame. The jury took less than 4 hours. Guilty, on every count. Brandon Pierce got 23 years in federal prison with no chance of parole for 15. Kevin Chen received 15 years for cooperating and helping locate the stolen money. Together, they were ordered to pay more than $7 million in restitution, I sat in the back during sentencing. When Brandon, handcuffed and in an orange jumpsuit, looked back at me, his eyes burned with hatred. I met his stare calmly, said nothing, and walked out. A week earlier, Jennifer had signed the divorce papers. Her downfall was fast. Evidence showed she knew about at least part of the fraud. Her texts proved she was aware of the offshore account and fake attorney. She moved in with her mother, leaving almost everything behind. When we met at the lawyer's office to sign the final papers, she looked broken. No makeup, swollen eyes, wearing sweatpants. "I didn't know how deep it went," she whispered. "I thought Brandon was just a rich businessman. I didn't know about the other women." I didn't reply, just signed. "I'm sorry," she said. "I was stupid and selfish. I ruined everything good we had." "You didn't ruin what we had," I said. "There was nothing real. I was pretending to be someone else and you wanted control. It was doomed from the start. We both failed, but you lost everything." The marriage ended that day. I left feeling lighter, like I'd finally dropped a weight I'd carried too long. It took months to clean up the aftermath. I worked with federal agents to trace the stolen money, offshore accounts, shell companies, fake real estate holdings. Years of intelligence training paid off. In the end, sufferers recovered about 87% of what they lost. Some became fraud awareness advocates. Victor started a construction company called Second Chances, hiring ex-cons, rebuilding their lives. I sold the old house, too many lies there, and bought a loft downtown with brick walls and high ceilings. It felt honest. Nathan and I launched Cooper and Carter Security, focusing on fraud prevention, sufferer support, and executive protection. Since then, we've helped dozens of people, sometimes for free, always making sure hunters face real justice. A year later, I spoke at a law enforcement conference about financial fraud. In front of hundreds of officers and FBI agents, I shared my story about being underestimated, fighting back, and refusing to play the sufferer. Cons thrive on isolation, I told them. Sufferers feel alone and ashamed. Break that isolation, connect them, and they start to see the pattern. That's how you fight back. Document everything, stay patient, and never underestimate yourself or anyone else. The standing ovation felt better than any government medal I'd ever earned. Now, I teach self-defense at a community center, helping women who faced misuse. I volunteer teaching financial literacy, warning others about scams like Brandon's. I adopted a German shepherd named Echo. I have dinners with Nathan, Lisa, and others I've helped. Real friends this time. For 15 years, I lived as someone trained by an agency. For 3, I lived as the man my ex-wife wanted. Now I'm just me. No masks, no pretending. About 18 months after the divorce, Jennifer messaged me. "I saw the news about your firm. I'm proud of you." I deleted it without answering. Some doors stay closed for a reason. When people ask if I regret any of it, I tell them the truth. Jennifer telling me to sleep in the garage while her boyfriend visited was the best thing that ever happened to me. It forced me to stop pretending to be less than I was. I'm not that quiet man anymore, who stayed small to keep the peace. I don't hide what I can do. I'm Daniel Carter, and Daniel Carter doesn't sleep in garages for anyone.